When you need to work with the best global partners, Malaysian businesses can give you the edge you need. Martrade links you with Malaysian exporters, matching you with Malaysian partners in your industry. Access to Malaysian exporters means better connections to world-class products and services. So you can set your standards even higher and go further. Malaysian exporters will help you make a difference. Grow your business today with us by your side. Choose Malaysia.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On behalf of the organizers, I would like to welcome all of you to the webinar, Reconnect Hong Kong-Malaysia Partnership. And before we begin, may I please introduce myself? My name is Melody, and I will be your host for today. The webinar today is organized by the Commerce and Economic Development Bureau of the Hong Kong SAR government and the Ministry of International Trade and Industry of Malaysia. And it is also our privilege to have the following parties co-organizing the event, that is, the Consulate General of Malaysia in Hong Kong, the Hong Kong Economic and Trade Office in Jakarta, the Hong Kong Trade Development Council, and the Chinese Manufacturers Association of Hong Kong. Today's event is also supported by Invest Hong Kong, the Malaysian Investment Development Authority, and the Malaysia External Trade Development Corporation. Before we get started, I would like to extend a gentle reminder for all of our participants about the following points. First of all, this webinar will be conducted in English and it will last for about 1 hour and a half. The microphones and videos for the audiences will be muted at all times. Therefore, if you wish to ask any questions, please do submit your questions together with your email address by using the Q&A function. While you may submit your questions anytime during the webinar today, they will only be answered during the Q&A session. we may not be able to address all of the questions during the Q&A session. Therefore, any unanswered questions relevant to the topic of discussion today will be replied individually via the email after the webinar. The chat function will also be disabled throughout the webinar. Everyone, please do make note. Now, I would like to introduce the agenda of today's webinar. We will start with the welcome remarks by Mr. Edward Yao, the Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development of the Hong Kong SAR government. This will then be followed by the responding remarks by YB Datu Seri Mohammed Azmin Ali, Senior Minister, Ministry of International Trade and Industry of Malaysia. Next, we will have a panel discussion on emerging stronger with closer collaboration and partnership. Today, we are delighted to have leading figures from both Hong Kong and Malaysia across different industries. That is including the Chinese Manufacturers Association of Hong Kong, the Hong Kong Trade Development Council, the Malaysia External Trade Development Corporation, and the Malaysian Investment Development Authority, etc. at our panel. After the panel discussion, we will then open the floor to any questions in the audience, that is from the answers in our panel. Lastly, we will invite Mr. Edward Yao and Mr. Yap Wei Sin, the Consul General of Malaysia in Hong Kong, to deliver the closing remarks. Without further ado, let us invite Mr. Edward Yao. He is the Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development of the Hong Kong SAR government to address the audience. Secretary Yao, the floor is all yours.
Thank you, Melody. Yeah, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, Senior Minister Datu Seri Mohammed Ali, Consul General Yap, ladies and gentlemen. So happy to be here in this web meeting. Well, I think the title for today, Reconnect Hong-Kong-Malaysian Partnership, is a very sort of a good description of the relations between Malaysia and Hong Kong. Well, we've all of a sudden, we seem to be sort of keeping ourselves apart from each other because of COVID-19. But I would say that Malaysia and Hong Kong never been really apart. I recall last November, I led a 52 members delegation visiting KL and has been receiving very excellent reception. The reception is not just the hospitality of your government, your business leader, but also the interaction between delegates on both sides, signifying, in fact, there is a great partnership, as the name of today's program suggests, between Hong Kong and Malaysia. Well, actually, in this upcoming session, I discovered that, well, some of the speakers actually are the connecting persons. Of course, we all know the Datu Seri chair, a good friend of us. And also, well, I discovered just this morning that another speaker, the Deputy Executive Director of TDC, also has a sort of Malaysian sort of a connection. So in a way, it is not just businesses, but also our people connecting with these two mutual economies, which by ourselves are very, very close. Of course, at the sort of with the challenge of COVID-19, I think we need to adjust to this new normal. While we may not be able to visit each other as we did like last year, but I think nothing should stop us from sort of communicating through various means. And I think the webinar today is one of the very effective ways to connect both Hong Kong and Malaysia. And in fact, despite the challenges of the pandemic, Hong Kong and Malaysia actually enjoy still a very strong and robust mutual commercial relations. I think trade in 2019 has been an increase compared with the year before. I'm sure, well, there might be some setback in the global and regional trade, but I believe the free trade agreement between Hong Kong and ASEAN as a whole, and Malaysia included, would be a very good platform for Hong Kong and Malaysian business sector to communicate, to trade, and to enjoy this business relationship with greater certainty and also protection. Now, I believe, well, while we were all hit by COVID-19, there are also new opportunities coming up, especially in areas of like public health, the fight against epidemic, vaccine development, testing. So anything to do with e-health, e-communication, or even e-learning would become a very sexy topic for people around the world. But I think one of the very strong pillars supporting Hong Kong and Malaysian trade relations is our mutual belief that, well, open, fair, and competitive trading environment is conducive to global, regional, and bilateral trade. And I think that's the very spirit of the free trade agreement that Hong Kong entered into with ASEAN community. I believe where everybody feels the heat that at the time of the lockdown arising from COVID-19, it actually speak louder for the need to ride over the storm by getting connected with each other. So I believe the program today, attended by almost 1,000 participants from both sides, would open up a new door for Hong Kong and Malaysia to further our commercial relations. And I believe TDC and also all the agencies involved in this exercise would take advantage of this platform, whereby we can pick up from here all the conversation from the macro picture into turning it into business opportunities. At the moment, I think Hong Kong is struggling with the COVID-19, but with the hard effort of medical professionals and also the strong discipline and compliance with the community at large, we are trying to walk out from the heat of the pandemic. So far, I think the community outbreak has been put under control, and we have done an extensive community testing involving almost 2 million people who came voluntarily to be tested. I hope all these would demonstrate that Hong Kong stand ready to ride over the storm. But I think Hong Kong is not alone. We believe that in riding out of the storm, we need collaboration among partners, among like-minded countries, because the common enemy is the epidemic rather than each other. So I think all these provide a very good backdrop for Hong Kong and Malaysia to work even closer with each other. So I look forward to hearing all the speakers from sharing their thought and pick from their wisdom. And then I'll come back and perhaps joining the CG in bringing a close to this conversation. But I hope that will be just the beginning of a new chapter between Malaysia and Hong Kong partnership. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary Yao. Definitely something to look forward to. YB Datu Seri Mohammed Azmin Ali, Senior Minister, Ministry of International Trade and Industry of Malaysia, will now deliver his remarks to us.
His Excellency Edward Yao, Secretary for Commerce and Economic Development of Hong Kong, distinguished panel speakers, business leaders, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. First and foremost, I would like to express Malaysia's appreciation to the Hong Kong SAR government for initiating this webinar and for the opportunity to be the co-host. This webinar comes at an opportune time, and the theme of reconnecting the partnership between Hong Kong and Malaysia is most apt in view of the global crisis brought on by COVID-19. The pandemic has indeed caused major disruption in the way we do business, but despite the many uncertainties and challenges in the global landscape, both our governments have remained steadfast in continued efforts to overcome the hurdles. We know that since the onset of the pandemic, governments across the globe have gone on overdrive to do battle against this insidious virus. In our efforts to curb the spread and flatten the curve, unintended economic consequences were also unleashed. And while Malaysia and Hong Kong were not spared from these economic repercussions initially, nevertheless, we have managed to nip the problem in the bud, as they say, by taking swift, decisive, and bold action. In the process, we were guided by the imperative of striking a balance between protecting lives and livelihoods. The upshot is that we managed to contain COVID-19 effectively without overwhelming our healthcare systems, and at the same time implemented a series of economic stimulus packages to spur recovery and ensure economic sustainability. To my mind, reconnecting our partnership means that we must redouble our efforts and commitment to take swift and concrete action in our economic agendas, capitalizing on our strong existing linkages. This will pave the way towards full post-crisis economic resumption, recovery and regeneration for both Malaysia and Hong Kong. In respect of greater regional collaboration and integration, I believe we must continue to echo the joint pledge made in the multilateral realm of ASEAN, ASEAN+3 and APEC to work closely in the fight against this pandemic and counter its adverse impact on trade and economy. In these challenging times, we should seize the opportunities presented for the greater enhancement of e-commerce transactions as well as other online activities. In this regard, I'm confident that the business communities from both Hong Kong and Malaysia will engage in further collaboration while stepping up on the application of innovation and technology. No doubt, this partnership will contribute positively towards the enhancement of cross-border businesses and investments. This is a partnership built on decades of close economic relations, complementary industries and sectors, strong commercial presence, preferential trading arrangements, cross-border investment frameworks facilitation, and even cultural assimilation of our peoples. Ladies and gentlemen, now on to a more specific note pertaining to investing in Malaysia. I would like to share that Malaysia's economy is diversified and supported by strong fundamentals, which offers the right mix of strategic value propositions for investors. The Malaysian government remains committed to improving our business-friendly environment. For the record, Malaysia was ranked 12th out of 190 countries in the 2020 World Bank's Ease of Doing Business report. The government is committed to helping its citizens and the business community in recovering from the COVID-19 pandemic. The economic stimulus packages referred to earlier were focused on three key thrusts, namely to empower people, propel businesses, and stimulate the economy. I would like to take this opportunity to encourage Hong Kong investors to look at Malaysia as a gateway to the ASEAN market with its 647 million population. By locating in Malaysia, investors are also able to leverage on the ASEAN economic community as well as future high potentials of the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, which will have a market access of 3 billion people. In this connection, Malaysia would also like to welcome high technology companies in Hong Kong to consider expanding their manufacturing plants, commercial business network, and the booming e-commerce sector in Malaysia. Ladies and gentlemen, in closing, I would like to emphasize that Hong Kong is and remains an important strategic partner for Malaysia, demonstrated most prominently from our bilateral economic trade and investment relations, which had grown from strength to strength in the past decade despite global challenges. Going forward, I'm optimistic that our relations will only grow stronger, even as there is no let-up from the ravage of the pandemic. It is our earnest hope that Malaysia and Hong Kong will continue to be resilient and will attain greater exponential growth. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senior Minister Azmin Ali, for the remarks. Now we may move on to the panel discussion. I would like to first introduce the moderator today. That is Mr. Dennis Yip, the Commissioner for Belt and Road of the Hong Kong SAR government. Besides, we are honored to have our 4 panelists from Hong Kong and 3 panelists from Malaysia. They are all top industry leaders with expertise on a wide range of areas and business experience in Hong Kong, in Malaysia, and beyond. Commissioner Yip and our expert panelists will share their insights under the theme of emerging stronger with closer collaboration and partnership. Now, may I hand over to our moderator. Commissioner Yip, please.
Thank you, Melody. It's great to hear the speech from both Secretary Yao and Senior Minister Ali. And amazingly, Malaysia is actually the second largest trading partner of Hong Kong within ASEAN. And also Hong Kong is the second largest foreign direct investment, FDI, in Malaysia. So there's a lot of collaboration already within both Hong Kong and Malaysia. So I'm very glad today to have 7 panelists with us, and 4 actually with us in the Hong Kong side, and then 3 in the Malaysian side. So let me introduce the 7 of the panelists. First of all, sitting next to me is Dato Sherry Jia Qinghai. He is a very famous financial person, the co-chairman for Fair Partners Group. Second panelist sitting next to him is Mr. Shanghai Long, the MD of SenseTime Hong Kong. SenseTime is actually a very famous AI facial recognition firm among China, Hong Kong, ASEAN, and Europe. Now, the first speaker with us is Dr. Patrick Lau. Dr. Patrick Lau is the Deputy Executive Director for Hong Kong Trade Development Council. And we also have the President of China Manufacturing Association, Dr. Dennis with us. But he will be a little bit late, so he'll be joining us shortly. Now, introducing the 3 speakers from the Malaysian side. The first speaker is Mr. Abu Bakar, who is the Senior Director for Exports Promotion and Market Access Division of MATRADE. MATRADE is Malaysian External Trade Development Corporation. Now, the second speaker is Mr. Sheikh Shamsuk Ibrahim bin Sheikh Abdul Majid, and he's the Director for MIDA, the Malaysian Investment Development Authority. The first speaker is actually from Hong Kong, residing in Malaysia, is the CEO of VTech Communications, Mr. Andy Leung. Now, we have all the panelists with us, and today we actually have heard both Secretary Yao and Senior Minister Ali talking about different topics. There are 3 areas that we want to focus on in the panel. The panel's name, of course, is Emerging Stronger with Closer Collaboration and Partnership. Now, we talk about the IT and technology cooperation because of COVID-19, and actually there are different technologies that both Hong Kong side and Malaysia side can be using. We will also talk about the different trade partnership that evolve and had been very strong between Hong Kong and Malaysia. And also we'll talk about the investment promotion activities, and especially for Malaysian business that want to come to Hong Kong, and also for Hong Kong business that want to expand to Malaysia. So let me ask the panelists, first of all, to spend about 5 to 7 minutes to talk about their expertise and also his ideas on the 3 topics. So the first speaker will be Dato Seri Cha to help us on this topic. Dato, please.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon. Thank you, Commissioner Yip. So this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking that at the moment, we are seeing rising tension between China and the United States. I'm very clear that the Chinese are aiming to improve friendship and cooperation with Malaysia and other countries, provided it's not unreasonable, ask, and it shall be given. So this is very much a situation now where Malaysia should be asking itself, what do we want from Hong Kong, and by extension, China? For Malaysia, a key element of the national dream is to become a wealthy nation. Today, with a per capita income of $11,400, Malaysia is already an upper middle income country. So it still have just a little bit more to go to be classified as an advanced country. The problem here, and this is only my personal opinion, is that Malaysia has long suffered from capital flight and a brain drain. So to reach developed country status, Malaysia needs to raise its productivity, and that means encouraging domestic and foreign investors to put money into the country. So far, the track record has not been very good in that respect. I think some of the solutions to this problem can be found by strengthening cooperation with Hong Kong and with China. You can see, for example, recently that what I think is probably the most exciting company in Malaysia today, Top Glove Corporation, has said it will seek a Hong Kong listing to be able to reach a global investor base. Top Glove, of course, is the world's largest manufacturer of gloves, and it has been rapidly growing amid the COVID-19 crisis. Now, besides raising capital through Hong Kong, Malaysia can also use Hong Kong to reach the rapidly growing consumer market of China. China now has a per capita income that just crossed the US dollars $10,000 level, which is not that far behind Malaysia's per capita income, making it a great business opportunity. And as I said, ask and it shall be given if it's not too unreasonable. Through the Stock Connect scheme, companies and investors in Hong Kong are connected to the Shanghai and Shenzhen markets, creating a giant pool of capital. In fact, in 4 of the last 6 years, Hong Kong has ranked #1 in the world for initial public offerings. In any capital market, the level of liquidity is critical. The volume of trading today in the Hong Kong stock market is roughly 16 times the volume that of the Kuala Lumpur stock market, Bursa Malaysia, and about 10 times bigger than the Singapore market. And after the last 2 years reforming its listing rules, Hong Kong has become a global center for listing technology companies. I think you're going to see that in the coming listing of Ant Financial, which is shaping up to be the world's largest ever IPO. Right now, out of 68 Malaysian companies listed outside Malaysia, about 1/3 are already listed in Hong Kong and 1/3 are listed in Singapore. Also worth noting is that a significant part of the Chinese money flowing overseas for investment actually are channeled through Hong Kong. A good example is the ECRL, the East Coast Rail Link in Malaysia, which is connecting Kota Baru to Port Klang. In fact, that money, which is made possible by Chinese funding, has been channeled through Hong Kong's banking system. Hong Kong, of course, is also the world's largest center for the offshore trading of Chinese renminbi. This is going to be important because the Chinese currency increasingly is becoming internationalized. From the Malaysian perspective, Hong Kong's role in China's Greater Bay Area project, a development zone with an economy larger than Australia, will be another key opportunity. And of course, Hong Kong is a remarkably welcoming place for Malaysians. More than 20,000 Malaysians, majority of them businessmen and professionals, live happily in Hong Kong. We are a thriving community with our own Malaysian Chamber of Commerce and own Malaysian Association. In fact, through our durian diplomacy, meaning durian parties, we make a lot of friends and influence a lot of people in Hong Kong. Thank you.
Thank you, Dato' Seri Chair. It's very interesting that using Hong Kong as a connection to China. Actually, I want to ask you about why the stock price dropped today and whether it's a good time to invest, but it's not the topic for this session. So let me pass on to the next panelist, who is sitting next to Mr. Chair, and he is Mr. Shanghai Long, the Managing Director of SenseTime Hong Kong. And I saw some equipment in front of him, so I think it will be interesting to hear his speech. Mr. Shang, please.
Yeah, thank you. His Excellency Ali, Mr. Yao, Commissioner Dennis Ye, thank you for giving us this opportunity to introduce a Hong Kong-based startup company of Hong Kong. Yeah, we are SenseTime. I think you can remember us very easy because today is a big day. It's time to make sense. We are SenseTime. Okay, we are the largest unicorn of the world focusing on AI, especially focusing on the intelligence vision. We launched a lot of patents and a lot of solutions using this machine vision technology. For example, we use AI plus a smart city, and we use AI to enable autonomous driving car. We published the first textbook to teach the students to learn AI in the world. So in the past 6 years, we established in the end of 2014. In the past 6 years, we have expanded to more than 4,000 staff working together, and we have around 14 different countries and regional centers all over the world. Actually, I want to repeat good news that we announced. We have invested in Malaysia last year. We invested an AI park. I think that's first AI park in Malaysia. We collaborated with the G3 company, which is some big company in Malaysia and a state company of China. So thanks for giving us this opportunity. Maybe we can share a lot more news in the later. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Sheng. And my children always ask me about whether AI will take on their jobs. So hopefully your company will not take a lot of our jobs in the future. The next speaker we have is actually from Hong Kong Trade Development Council, the Deputy Executive Director, Dr. Patrick Lau. And as Secretary Yao has introduced, he is of Malaysian descent. So he probably has some special perspective. Dr. Lau, please.
Thank you, Commissioner Yip. Secretary Yao, Senior Minister Asmin Ali, Consul General Mr. Yap, and Commissioner Yip. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. On Hong Kong-Malaysian collaboration, we at the HKTDC, we know very well about how vibrant this relationship is. Our HKTDC on branch office in Kuala Lumpur has been more than 20 years old. And for the last few years, we have had several business missions from Hong Kong to Malaysia, including the one last November led by Secretary Yao. We are also very active in Malaysia, in ASEAN in general. We have our Install Hong Kong mega campaign. The last edition in 2017, we staged in Kuala Lumpur, attracted 4,000 people, and nearly 100 Hong Kong brands were featured in that event. The Malaysian consumers can also enjoy the Hong Kong products through our design gallery platform in Malaysia. We call DG Studio. And this year, it's actually been put onto Shopee Malaysia as well. Last year, HKTDC, we actually organized over 35 large-scale exhibitions, trade fair, public fairs, and conferences here in Hong Kong. And we had more than 2 million participants, buyers, visitors to these events, of which I'm glad to note 3,500 were Malaysian buyers. We also had a very successful Belt and Road Summit in 2019 last year, attracting 5,000 participants over 67 countries. And 92 delegates came from Malaysia. So indeed, there are multiple channels for Hong Kong and Malaysia to work together. And in all these events, we have actually staged business matching in the events. And for example, the Belt and Road Summit, we had 700 business matching meetings. I will just add two more observations. One is that under the pandemic, Hong Kong companies have been quick to adapt. And I'm proud to say that more than 200, almost 200 companies are now joining into a campaign led by the Hong Kong government and co-organized by HKTDC to champion and share the technology with ASEAN markets. And this includes health tech, e-learning, e-business, as well as smart city solutions. Also, in addition to the pandemic, we are also seeing trade protectionism and also geopolitical tensions. So we are also seeing some supply chain reorientation taking place. I'm proud to say also that Hong Kong investors are also looking at industrial parks in ASEAN, including in Malaysia. And this is again an initiative led by the Hong Kong government together with HKTDC to help Hong Kong business people to find alternative manufacturing and supply chain sources. I will stop there for the time being. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lau, and I'm glad to hear there are so many channels that Hong Kong and Malaysian different parties can participate in. And then one advertisement I want to make here is he mentioned about the Belt and Road Summit. The coming Belt and Road Summit will be on November 30th, so stay tuned and try to enroll. Now we want to move to the Malaysian side of the panelists. And the first one I want to introduce is Mr. Abu Bakar from Martrade. Mr. Abu Bakar, please.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dennis. Yeah. I think, first of all, let me take this opportunity to thank the Hong Kong SAR government, to the Commerce and Economic and Development HKSAR Ministry, and then HKTDC for giving us the chance to be here. And I think secondly is that I just want to quickly, just to tell the participants about who are we, Matrade, as probably been mentioned earlier, is the Malaysian government agency under the Ministry of International Trade and Industry. Right? It's develop and promote Malaysia's external trade with an emphasis on manufactured and as well as all other products, even services, as a bridge between local manufacturer and overseas importer. Matrade coordinates business matching programs. We do hold promotional activities of Malaysia's products and services worldwide, as well as organized trade and investment mission to major and emerging markets. Matrade is represented by more than 40 locations throughout the world in major commercial cities, as well as in Hong Kong. And we have, as well as, having beside the trade commissioners overseas, we do also have 5 local branches within Malaysia, which support and develop in the development of our exporters. Quickly, talking through the statistic, I think maybe this may bore you, but I just want to highlight that Hong Kong remains as Malaysia's top 10 countries. I think this will be something, I don't think the word reconnect somehow rather reflect that, this kind of a statement, which means to say that currently, the trade between Malaysia and Hong Kong is as usual. Business is as usual. But of course, with the COVID and all that, there is some need for us to reignite the flame in a way. I think what we can see is that in 2019, Hong Kong is Malaysia's 7th largest trading partner. We are the 4th largest export destination and the 15th largest source of import. Due to the outbreak of COVID, I think an unfavorable external economic condition, a lower trade was recorded with Hong Kong for the period of January to July 2020, which contracted by 8.4%. Export decreased by 7.7%, while import declined by 11.5%. I think this is based on the Malaysia's Department of Statistics information. But however, within that limitation, we see that there is a double-digit growth experience in certain sectors. For example, the rubber product sector, we have a growth in the palm oil and palm oil-based agriculture produce, as well as processed food. I think previously some of, the commissioner has mentioned earlier on that Hong Kong as a gateway to China. I think Hong Kong plays a very important role for being the important gateway for Malaysia's product to enter the mainland China. Malaysian companies have been leveraging on the easier access of Hong Kong to gain entry into the China market. More than 80% of Malaysian product have been re-exported through Hong Kong. This clearly indicates Hong Kong's importance to Malaysia as far as trade is concerned. In addition, Hong Kong and Malaysia have signed a joint declaration on strengthening economic cooperation on 1st December 2009. The joint declaration is aimed to encourage and promote bilateral economic cooperation. Matrade office in Hong Kong, in collaboration with HKTDC, has undertook various efforts to promote and enhance trade between both countries. As for trade, some of 20% of mainland international trade is routed through Hong Kong, making it a key player in the global supply chain. Hong Kong's position and proximity to China makes it the perfect platform for businesses to access the mainland China market. In addition, multimodal transportation links between Hong Kong and the mainland, plus the 24 hours custom clearance are complemented by an extensive cross-boundary infrastructure that is continually being upgraded to keep pace with business and traffic growth. This is why I think a Malaysian company is leveraging on the proximity of Hong Kong to this one. The other area was mentioned earlier was on the Greater Bay Area. We see there is a lot of prospect that Malaysian company can further look into leveraging on Hong Kong, which is very much nearer to the GBA prospect area. I think with that, I'll pass it over back to Mr. Dennis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Abdul Bakar. And I certainly agree that Greater Bay Area is basically one of the strong points that Malaysia and Hong Kong should be connecting even more closer together. Now, the next panelist is also from Malaysia, Mr. Sik Shamsuk from MINDA. And Mr. Sik Shamsuk, please.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis Yip. I'm Shamsul, as introduced by Mr. Dennis Yip. Let me talk about what is MIDA all about. We are the Malaysian government's principal agency for the promotion of investment in the manufacturing and services sectors in Malaysia. MIDA is one of the 13 agencies, together with Matrade and other agencies. We are under the Ministry of International Trade and Industry. For investors, we are the first point of contact, especially for manufacturers and services providers, including those from Hong Kong who wish to invest in Malaysia. We provide end-to-end facilitation for investments into Malaysia or in the country, which includes investment promotion, evaluation of manufacturing and services projects, implementation of approved projects, and hand-holding investors on post-investment matters. In MIDA, we also run the one-stop center, comprises various government departments and agencies to support investors' needs. Among the department agencies stationed in MIDA are Immigration Department, Royal Malaysian Customs, Royal Department, Telekom Malaysia in charge of telecommunication services, and Tenaga Nasional that provides electricity services. We also have a dedicated team of 20 officers stationed in Kuala Lumpur and China to facilitate investors coming from the Greater China region. Our 5th team member in Guangzhou is responsible to support the interests from Hong Kong investors. In addition, we also have offices in Beijing and Shanghai. That's all from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sik Shamsuk. And I'm sure that the audience will know where to go if they want to invest in Malaysia. MIDA is going to be helping them. Now, the next speaker is in the Malaysian side, but actually is from Hong Kong. And he's based in Malaysia, the CEO of VTech. And as all of you probably know, VTech used to be a very important toy company, but right now has been shifting to e-learning and a different perspective. So let me introduce Mr. Andy Leung. Andy, please.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Yip. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me first give you a very short introduction of VTech. We have 3 major business areas: the educational learning toys, telecommunication products, and contract manufacturing service. The total revenue of VTech was $2.1 billion in fiscal year 20. Although Malaysia is not our major market, we have been making good progress and feel comfortable in doing business and making investment there. For educational learning products, we achieved revenue growth from Malaysia by more than 30% in fiscal year 20. The major contribution was coming from the online sales. We opened an online flagship store in Lazada 2 years ago. As of today, just behind Lego, we are the number 2 player in revenue ranking in Lazada under the toy category. Talking about the market itself, the growth of the younger middle class in Malaysia is not only expanding the consumer market, but also enhancing the use of online shopping. Consumers in Malaysia are very brand conscious. Arising from the new normal, the whole population start changing their way of shopping. The drop in revenue from physical retail store is one of our major challenges, but we saw good revenue growth from the internet. At the same time, our educational learning product is benefit from the new normal, just because parent is considering our product as an alternative tool for learning from home. With headquarters in Hong Kong, China is our primary manufacturing site. However, China Plus One has long been the operational strategy of VTech. We believe when we grow our sales to certain size, we have the responsibility to offer alternative manufacturing site to customer as contingency. We chose Malaysia as the second manufacturing site for a number of good reasons. Unlike other countries in the region, we find the right talent and the well-adapted supply chain in the electronic industry from Malaysia. The acceptance of foreign labor resolved the issue of labor supply. Cost of manufacturing in Malaysia is not the lowest among the regions. However, it is very much competitive with that in China. The service and support from MIDA is also very good and helpful. One more good reason for me is I can feel safe in traveling and staying in Malaysia. We acquired the former Pioneer factory in Johor in August 2018 to serve our customer from the EMS industry. In 2019, we took over the former Seagate factory in Penang. This makes up the total manufacturing space in Malaysia up to 25% of the company production capacity. The factory in Johor has been up and running since day one. The factory in Penang will be in operation in 2021. This factory were acquired at the right timing to take care of the trade conflict between US and China. We are still searching for further opportunity of acquisition. For those who have interest to learn more about our experience in Malaysia, I will be more than happy to share with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Andy. And I think a lot of companies are considering the China Plus One strategy, especially currently the tariff issue. So I think a lot of people might contact you to learn more about it. Last but not least, we have Dr. Dennis with us now. And Dr. Dennis is the president of Chinese Manufacturers Association. Dr. please.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to thank the Hong Kong SAR and Malaysian government for organizing this webinar. The theme of today's webinar is Reconnect, but I think we have never disconnect. Last year, I joined the trade mission led by Mr. Edward Yao to KL to promote Hong Kong. We have got very good receptions from the Malaysian government and the local business sector. So we already have a deep understanding of each other. While COVID-19 continues to spread in many countries, world economies all face huge challenges. According to the WTO, world trade is expected to fall by between 13 and 32% in 2020. Luckily, the outlook for Asia is more positive. Our motherland China, the outlook for Asia is the first country to recover from the pandemic. Malaysia is also rebounding quickly. Today's meeting will be a good opportunity for us to discuss how to cooperate to further strengthen our recovery. The trade war and the global uncertainty following the outbreak of the pandemic are forcing Hong Kong companies to explore secondary manufacturing locations in Southeast Asia. Malaysia enjoys a relatively stable political environment and rich natural resources. The countries have more than 500 industry parks and 18 free industrial zones, which make Malaysia an ideal place for Hong Kong company to set up a production line. Suitable industries, including electronics, high-tech products, plastic products, and food processing. I also know that the Malaysian government is keen to upgrade the country manufacturing sector by launching the Industry Forward national policy since 2017. Hong Kong manufacturers excel in product development, supply chains management, and international trade, and many of them invest heavier in R&D and technology upgrading. I believe that we could bring useful knowledge and experience to Malaysia and help the country manufacturing sector to advance and expand into other regions. There is one thing we should note. However, the cost of labor in Malaysia is rising. The average wage in manufacturing is more than $700 per month, higher than other countries in the region. There are also levies on foreign workers. All this may lead to lower profit for company. But as such, industry which require less labor will be more suitable. The Belt and Road, or BRI, and the Greater Bay Area will make vital contribution to restarting the world economies. They are opening up huge opportunity, not only for Hong Kong companies, but also for business worldwide. For instance, the BRI covers about 65% of the world's population and about a quarter of the world trade of goods and service. Malaysian and Hong Kong companies can team up to get the trading opportunity. The Great Bay Area will also create numerous opportunities for Malaysian business. Hong Kong manufacturers and traders who know the mainland domestic market well and assist Malaysian products to enter this massive market by helping them to build a strong brand image and connect with Chinese consumers. Hong Kong is now undergoing a reindustrialization process. I would suggest Malaysian manufacturers, especially those operating in advanced manufacturing industry, to consider set up production line or branch office in Hong Kong to make use of the city unit advantage, such as the one country, two system, zero tariff, and free trade, open capital market, outstanding R&D, and professional service, as well as Hong Kong brand competitive edge to enter mainland and other Asian markets. I look forward to even stronger link with our friends here in Malaysia in the years to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. M. And actually, we have about 15 minutes left. And I would like to have a very crisp, short panelist discussions on different topics. Now, a lot of you have talked about COVID-19 situations, how that affects the business. Let me go back to Dr. M just now. He has a lot of experience on investing into different areas. And a lot of Hong Kong enterprises are now having want to reach out to new markets, but it's a difficult time with COVID-19. What's your advice to those businesses?
Okay, thank you. So when deciding to set up an overseas production line, companies should consider a range of the factors. For example, is there a developed supply chain? Can the infrastructure such as ports and transportation networks support the industry? Is the labor productive? Are labor costs lower than in China? The ASEAN is already a major manufacturing hub. ASEAN countries are home to long-standing trade network and international business. They also have a increasingly well-educated young workforce. The government of members states are keen to attract foreign investment by launching many incentives. Malaysian China Quantum Industry Park, for instance, can create many business opportunities. Today, more than 10 mainland and Hong Kong companies such as Lee and Man Paper has signed investment agreement. However, the economic, political, and cultural background of each country are actually very different. Also, although some countries in Southeast Asia have had more success in fighting COVID-19, there is still much uncertainty ahead. For instance, the situation in Indonesia and the Philippines is still worrying, and they may take longer to rebound. Therefore, research before making investment is important.
Thank you, Dr. M. I want to go to the Malaysian side, and Mr. Abu Bakar, you talk a lot about the trade areas on cooperations. I want to ask about more specifically with COVID-19, e-commerce and e-learning are actually emerging. So what's your feel on digitization and how Hong Kong and Malaysian companies can participate in the e-commerce and e-learning area?
Thank you, Dennis. Very interesting question. You know, Dennis, this morning I was listening to a radio station, a favorite radio station of mine. During the discussion, they were mentioning that, you know, with COVID, most of the companies who have a 4 years digitalization plan now move to within 4 days they can digitalize. That shows how much COVID has changed the whole scenario of the e-commerce and also digitalization. Actually, in the case of Malaysia, most of our policies, Malaysia has, I think, in place some of the initiatives and policies such as industry forward, as mentioned just now by one of the speakers. We also have Malaysian digital economy policy and as well as our national automotive policy, which are basically looking at how we can further move into the e-businesses area as well as e-commerce. As for Matrix initiative under the e-commerce, we have realized the importance of e-commerce and especially in the area of business digitalization today. I think the importance of digitalization and the new form of new norms in doing business has encouraged or rather forced us to organize more events in through digital meetings. In particular, the e-BizMash, a virtual business meeting as matching session. I think as of September to 31st December, Matrix is also organizing currently the first digital exhibition named My APEC 2020 virtual exhibition. I believe there are about 5 Hong Kong companies are already participating in this. The exhibition include virtual business meetings, online pitching, as well as webinar. Under our e-trade program, Matrade also works with 20 international e-commerce platforms to enable Malaysian companies to further penetrate into the online business. Among them, of course, Alibaba is one of the first e-commerce platform that we have worked with. We are also collaborating with other aggregators such as Chinese-based B2B e-commerce platform, namely Jimbaoman. We have with Jocom, Home Deal. The e-aggregator have their own stores in like Tmall HK, Tmall.com, JD HK, Sunning.com, 1688.com, and Taobao.com. So these are some of the areas that we are venturing into, looking at how we can further penetrate into the Hong Kong as well as the Chinese market through participation in e-commerce. We are also have this, I think my colleague will also maybe want to discuss about the digital free trade zone, DFTZ, whereby SME onboarding program is initiated. In this program, SMEs can join with Alibaba using the e-trade incentive and enjoy the special offerings provided by Alibaba.com during the time. I think beside that, we also are organizing like Tmall Global Seminar entitled Tmall Business Seminar Gateway to China. And of course, Hong Kong will be, of course, a part of China. We are also looking into that. Other areas that we see that we can have a partnership with Hong Kong in this e-commerce area is that we know that the rapid development of Hong Kong e-commerce industry as more retailers set up their online presence. With more than 4.5 million e-shoppers, the e-commerce penetration rate in Hong Kong is at almost 60% in 2018 and is expected to hit 73% in 2022. The expansion in cross-border e-commerce with mainland China also offers huge growth opportunities for Hong Kong e-commerce sector. The possible areas of public collaboration that we can see is to set up e-commerce fulfillment center or warehousing in the GBA area between Malaysia and Hong Kong. There probably can be some collaboration that we can work on. And then the other thing is that link up e-marketplaces with potential exporters. Thirdly is that we co-organize facilitation program, including relevant talk series and seminars in informing both SMEs, in Hong Kong and Malaysia with regards to the opportunities available in both markets. I think with that, I'd like to say thank you very much again to MC and back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Abu Bakar. I want to get the e-solution from the Hong Kong side to respond, and of course, it's Mr. Shang Hai Long. I know there's equipment in front of him. I don't know what he's doing with it. Mr. Shang, please.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ye. Yeah, I think that today is a new normal. We should adapt to this new normal era. But actually, Hong Kong and the Hong Kong government and the Hong Kong companies like us, tech companies, should introduce our solutions to our neighborhood, for example, Malaysia. Because controlling the pandemic is very important. That's necessary because both of Malaysia and Hong Kong wants to restoring our economy as soon as possible. Before the vaccine is proved or can be used, made worldwide, I think the temperature screen is necessary and a very important measure, actually very important measure to protect the people and identify some COVID-19 potential COVID-19 patient. I think seeing is believing. So today I want to use this great opportunity to show a live demo, made in Hong Kong. That's very useful in Hong Kong market. We put this device into a lot of restaurant, public setters, private setters. That's very useful solution to you. Could you look at this device? We call this Sense Finder E Mini. That's a mini guy, right? It's handsome. Maybe Patrick could give Okay, give me a proof that. Okay, it contactless temperature screen, and it can give us a result of our temperature within 0.3 second. 0.3 second, right? It's highly accurate, and it can do the contact tracing. Yeah, if you use it. For example, I log in my message into this small machine, then it can detect me and detect the highest point of my forehead of face. They can find out this highest temperature points within more than 10,000 points. So that's AI. We use AI embedded into this device, and we launched a lot of this AI plus hardware solutions to you. So I can turn around to show you my device. Okay. So I think Hong Kong and the Hong Kong technology companies should introduce our e-solution. We used in this pandemic outbreak period. So I have more confidence if we can use these solutions to control this outbreak. I think it will be useful and it will be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. So the next few questions, I want to be one sentence answer. So the guys who have answered before gain the footage, unfortunately.
I'm so
sorry. Mr. Andy Leung, I know you have been doing a lot of work on the digitization space also. What's your one sentence advice on giving to Hong Kong investor going to Malaysia when they need to look into the digitization program?
I think the key is blending and also media. This is very important.
Branding and media. That's very good. We also talk about trading a lot, and you know, with Dato Seri Jia here, I was going to ask him a lot on how to raise funds, how to invest in Malaysia, etc. But due to the time limit, Dato Seri, what is your advice on investing, raising capital in regards to Malaysia?
Well, Malaysia is emerging as a center for Islamic finance. So it nicely complements what Hong Kong can do. I just had to give you some very simple examples. Our Malaysian subsidiary, Value Partners Malaysia, we are starting a private equity fund of about 500 million ringgit, Malaysian ringgit, to invest in workers' dormitories that comply with Islamic principles. At the same time, we are starting an exchange-traded fund that follows Islamic principles while investing in Chinese A-share market. So this shows you that we can combine Malaysia's Islamic finance expertise with Hong Kong financial know-how and access to international capital. It's a good partnership.
Thank you. Time is running out, so I want to leave Mr. Sik Shamsuk on the Q&A session. I will make sure that he has an answer on the Q&A section, as well as Dr. Patrick Lau. So let me end the panelist discussion here. Let me pass it back to Melody.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Commissioner Yip, and thank you to all of our panelists for the insightful discussion. Despite the epidemic, it is very clear that there remains ample room for Hong Kong and Malaysia to deepen our trade and economic partnership, as well as our people-to-people bond. Now we may turn to the Q&A session, and I'm sure that the audiences are very eager to learn even more from the speakers today. And we have already received some questions, as I can see. For those who have not yet submitted a question, please do feel free to do so with the Q&A function that is provided. Commissioner Yip will moderate the Q&A session and direct some selected questions for the speakers and panelists to answer. Now, may I please hand it back over to Commissioner Yip, please.
Thank you, Melody. Actually, these are not planted questions because I have never seen it, so you have to allow me to read the iPad. The first question, I think is for Secretary Yao, I'm not sure. When can international business travelers start flying between Hong Kong and Kuala Lumpur without the requirement of 14 days quarantine and without COVID tax within 24 hours of traveling? It's very complex. I think the question is, when does the travel bubble between Hong Kong and Malaysia can actually take place? Secretary Yao, please.
I think at the mind of the audience, the answer should be yesterday, right? Because there's so much to the connection. But I think the real answer lies in how hard we work with each other and bring that day sooner than expected. This morning, I have invited the Malaysian Consul General to my office and start the conversation on developing travel bubbles. Now, of course, Hong Kong is starting this process with a handful of countries where we both feel comfortable. And definitely, Malaysia is one that Hong Kong will be knocking on the door for the close connection and also the comparable sort of situation. But I think there are also conditions to be attached. The Hong Kong proposal is very simple, that for reconnecting with this bilateral corridor, there must be a double assurance through testing. Some discussion were made that, well, a mutually agreed testing before the visitors board on a plane is almost a must, and that must be recognized by both sort of country and government. And secondly, I think, well, all port authority would also do a double test upon arrival. In the case of Hong Kong, it's test and hold. I hope these two tests, if materialized, could provide an alternative to currently the quarantine, which in the case of Hong Kong is 14 days. Now, perhaps we should do more in also sort of building up the capacity in support of this, because it's easier said than done in doing tests. I think all government or public hospital would have such capability. But at the same time, I think we are also talking about commercial capability, that someone thinking of sort of proceeding on a traveling. In order to meet that pre-departure test, well, there must be availability of commercial tests in laboratory, private hospital, clinics. Now, Hong Kong is ramping up this, and at the moment, with the benefit of the community tests we have done, we are able to do over 100,000 tests per day, and at a reduced price. So, while we build this travel bubble, Hong Kong is also sort of introducing a business opportunity where quick tests or sort of COVID-19 related health protocol would be, in fact, a very, very big area for the public health and also for the scientific sector. So I hope this would bring the day earlier and also open up new door for businesses.
We certainly hope that there will be traveling opening soon. So thank you, Secretary Yao, for your very explicit answer. Now, the second question talks about an audience wants to open a toy factory in Penang. What kind of license is required, how to apply for it, what will be the charges, and how long it will take? Is it tax-free? How do we import all the production equipment from China? Do we have to tax this? So I think this question fits into MIDA with Mr. Sheikh Shamsuk on basically in this kind of expertise. Mr. Sheikh Shamsuk, please.
Thank you, Mr. Dennis Yip, for the questions. As far as in Malaysia is concerned, right? Toy factory, it is something that it depends on what type of toys that you're talking about, right? But as far as Malaysia is concerned, we are inviting those projects that of high quality investments. So when we talk about high quality, there are certain elements of investments that we are looking at. So, but in general, the elements of high quality investment include high technology, as I mentioned earlier, high value added, knowledge intensive, skill intensive, export oriented, capital intensive, design R&D intensive, and so on and so forth, and as well as those that have strong linkages with domestic industries. But to assist those projects to come into Malaysia, first of all, in Malaysia, if you were to do this investment in manufacturing sector or manufacturing project in Malaysia, you need to have a manufacturing license. If your shareholders fund, or in the case of new company, we looked at paid up capital, it has to be 2.5 million shareholders fund or paid up capital, or you are employing 75 full-time workers. This is stipulated in our Industrial Coordination Act 1975. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that if you are below this threshold, you don't have, you cannot do your investment in Malaysia. It's just like if you have that figures, then you need to apply for manufacturing license. So the need for manufacturing license based on the act is there, yeah, under in Malaysia. Yeah? But if you are less than that, below this threshold, you can still do the manufacturing, but you need to come to us for exemption. It means that you have to come to MIDA to submit a prescribed application form for you to set up with an exemption from license, but with certain conditions that we will tell the investors. Apart from the license, we also have these other supports, as I mentioned earlier. When it comes to some of the eligible projects, the government can consider certain tax exemption packages. Yeah, that's why under this Penjana, we call it, is the Malaysia Short-Term Economic Recovery Plan, where we can offer an incentives to encourage foreign manufacturing companies to relocate to Malaysia. There are two categories, depending on the investment amount. If the capex is between 300 to 500 million, then the government can consider full tax exemption for 10 years. Yeah. The other one is if the company is investing more than 500 million, we can consider 15 years tax-free. But this is all depending on the nature of projects and the conditions that we will impose according to the nature of the projects. Yeah. For existing companies, for example, let's say VTech, yeah, they are already in Malaysia. They are thinking of expanding in Malaysia. Under this short-term economic recovery plan, we can consider 100% investment tax allowance for 5 years, yeah, provided that they relocate some of their production from overseas, and this amount of capex is at least 300 million and above. The other thing that we would like to share is on the fast track approval for license. Nowadays, if you come to MIDA to get the manufacturing license, we are already doing it online. Within 2 working days, you can get your approval for the manufacturing license, but provided that these projects are in the non-sensitive industries. Yeah? To allow the manufacturers to implement their projects, because of COVID-19 pandemic, some of these, many of them are actually have to delay the implementation of the project. So MIDA, we have given the extension of 12 months for those companies to implement their projects. Yeah. And last but not least is on the assistance given to expatriates that are working in Malaysia. Some of them, or many of them, are actually stranded overseas, including those in China, in Hong Kong and whatnot. So MIDA, we have been working closely with immigration, whereby we are one of the approving authority for manufacturers and service providers, for us to provide the support letter, for some of the expatriates that need to come back to Malaysia to work for their employers in Malaysia. So with our letters, the application can be approved by Immigration Department. We've been assisting this effort. I mean, we are doing this effort to assist those expatriates, and up and until I think when we have the new program to allow the business travelers to come to travel to Malaysia with more flexibility and so on. So with that, I would like to thank Mr. Dennis Yip for the question. I hope that I answered the question.
Thank you, Mr. Suk Samsui. And let's take a final quick question. It's about finance. This person wants to invest in Malaysia and wants to buy Malaysian stocks. Now, he's asking where can he find more information? Dato Seri Chair, do you have that kind of information?
Yeah, it's a very easy one to answer. Yeah. Malaysia stock market actually has a history longer than that of the Hong Kong stock market. Yeah. So there are numerous broking services available you can open an account either in Hong Kong or in KL. You can do so through brokerages, you can do so through banks, etc. Malaysia's stock market currently trade at a price earnings ratio of 17 times. It is actually not a cheap market. Just be aware of that. I want to quickly say, because I've been listening to this good discussion, please note that Malaysia is not actually looking for companies that want to use cheap labor. The country actually is an upper middle income country and is very keen to move up the value chain. So there are other countries in ASEAN that may welcome you if all you really want is cheap labor. Thank you.
Now, Mr. Jack actually added a very good point in terms of when you try to move your manufacturing site, you need to do more research on where to go to. So with that, let me pass the Q&A session. It ends here, and let me pass the stage back to Melody.
Thank you so much for everyone's active participation in the Q&A session, everyone that's in front of me and everyone that's behind the monitors. Thank you very much. Before the event draws to an end, may I please invite Secretary Yao and Consul General Mr. Yap Wei Sin to close this webinar with a few words. Secretary Yao, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I must, on behalf of the organizers, thank all the speakers and also the question, which have given us a very good exchange. Well, perhaps based on the discussion, I pick up a few points that's worth repeating. Maybe something we can take home after this session. The first one is professional services. Of course, Ching Hai mentioned about financial services. That reminds me a very little story I picked up when our delegation were visiting KL. Well, we were at the showroom to look at the Malaysian Chinese Guangdong Industrial Park. So we were puzzling how many Hong Kong company, mainland companies are taking advantage of industrial park. But one thing we discover by looking at the information, actually the company that entered into joint venture with the Malaysian side, of course from the mainland China, was actually a listed company in Hong Kong. Now, since, well, it must have established since the founding of the park back in 2013. So in a way, professional services, including what Ching Hai and others mentioned, were put in place for a lot of infrastructural projects like the Guangdong Industrial Park. But one reminder perhaps is financial services, including legal, insurance, business, arbitration, all these services, should not come either before or after. Actually, they should be a partner that we can take along throughout the business processes at various stages of development. So perhaps one thing is what Hong Kong can serve has been a business partner in all sense, in the sort of life cycle and also in the value chain. So professionals do play a part, and that's what Hong Kong can offer. Now, the second point is a lot of speakers talk about technology, or put it in a wider context, smart city. Now, while e-commerce has been a term sort of emerged for decades, but actually, I think before COVID-19, it might be something nice to have. But look at today, it's something we must have. And I think grasp this opportunity for this transformation as part of the necessary process that we sort of move on. It's not just value addedness, but also a matter of survival. Again, in this regard, I think Hong Kong and Malaysia can be on the same pace and on the same page. Because I remember visiting the Cyber Java sort of technology park. I think we are all hungry for this technology. And actually, in tech business, there's no boundary. We are not just the provider, but also we are the user. So that perhaps the smarter we are, I think, the better business prospect we might be having. And I think the third point is the very simple calculation of 1 + 1 bigger than 2, which is exploring and exploiting the neighborhood and hinterland that we are all having. some speaker mentioned about the Greater Bay Area and, in fact, the mainland of China. Obviously, Hong Kong's economic hinterland. But likewise, I think Malaysia serves a very important role. As Ching Hai mentioned, well, Malaysia is, in fact, an emerging, well-developed sort of upper-middle country with a emerging sort of a middle-class income group, strong industrial base, and very healthy economic growth. So in a way, Malaysia is also well placed as a center for Hong Kong to tap on into the entire ASEAN community, which has a population over 600 million, and also sort of emerging sort of middle income group. So I think together we are also a connector to our wider economic hinterland. And I must say that, well, look at this side of the Pacific. Mainland China, ASEAN, Hong Kong, Malaysia actually capture a lion's share of growth area. And maybe we are at the center of this growth engine. Perhaps these are the few points I pick up from the speakers, and I think the collective wisdom says that, well, this is not the closing session. This is just the beginning of a new chapter, which I hope that all participants could take advantage of. So I look forward to seeing more people joining this discussion and also more business venture between Hong Kong and Malaysia. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Yao. Can I please invite Consul General Mr. Yap Wei Sin, please? Consul General, the floor is also yours.
Thank you, Secretary Yao, Commissioner Yip, distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, allow me to extend my sincere appreciation on behalf of the Malaysian government to all involved in organizing this webinar. The CUDB, MITI, Matrade, MIDA, HKTDC, Invest Hong Kong, the Chinese Manufacturers Association of Hong Kong, and special thanks to Mr. Dennis Yip, Belt and Road Commissioner, and his team for taking the lead, and also special thanks to all the distinguished panelists. And last but not least, thank you to all the webinar participants for joining us. The COVID-19 pandemic has forced difficult challenges for all economies around the world. The convening of this webinar is both important and timely. Like many of you, I have learned much from the valuable observations and insights of the speakers and panelists. The present state of Malaysia-Hong Kong relations is excellent. Our relations, premised on one country, two systems, and the one China policy have continued to flourish in scope and substance. As mentioned by the speakers, last year, Malaysia was Hong Kong's 7th largest trading partner, with trade at about 150 billion Hong Kong dollars. Made in Hong Kong products, as well as those made in Malaysia, continue to be welcomed with open arms by both markets. Last year, Hong Kong was Malaysia's second top FDI source, to the tune of about 16 billion Hong Kong dollars. The ASEAN-Hong Kong Free Trade and Investment Agreements, which came into force last year, will also further enhance our economic ties. As the light at the end of the COVID-19 tunnel looked like it may come into view, we can look forward to applying this webinar's observations, insights, and wisdom to further elevate Malaysia-Hong Kong economic ties. Moreover, when the conditions become viable, we can also look forward to a potential relaxation of travel restrictions, or perhaps the potential creation of travel bubbles to reconnect and further revitalize economies. Malaysia will always be business friendly. We offer a strategic location, competitiveness, ease of doing business, and global supply chain advantages. There is the China Special Channel to accelerate FDI from China, Hong Kong, and Macau. Malaysia will always welcome FDI, especially in the digital economy, high-tech, and high-wage industries, and services sector. In this global beacon city that is Hong Kong, the Consulate General of Malaysia and its agencies are the first port of call for companies, businesses, and investors interested in Malaysia, not just for the Malaysian market, but as the premium gateway to ASEAN and beyond. So please reach out to us. That is what we are here for. We will do our best to help you achieve success in Malaysia, the same success enjoyed by many foreign companies who made the right choice in choosing Malaysia. So with that, I would like to reiterate my thanks to everyone involved, from the key speakers to the technical support, for making this webinar a successful one. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you, Consul General, for your kind words. Thank you again for that. Ladies and gentlemen, the webinar has now come to an end. We hope that it has been a fruitful afternoon for all of you. Thank you once again to all of our distinguished guests and speakers for their insights, and all of the participants for joining us today. Thank you very much. Goodbye and have a great afternoon.